us off with the ballot? Or
Actually, one of us, I don't know who does. Is it you or me? Number one is to make the worship associate Jackson.
Good morning. Welcome to you all, whether you're here for the first time or have been here many times before, and whether you're joining us on Zoom or in the sanctuary, or watching the recording later. It's good to connect with you. The children and youth are invited to participate in our summer religious education activities during the service. And if your child would like to join, today we ask that they will go to the green door room, if you haven't taken them already, as they arrive. And you're asked to accompany the children to the program location before coming back to service. Care is also available in the nursery today on the lower level for infants and children through age 5. Please note the elevator is out of order, so use the stairs by the sanctuary. By greeting our virtual neighbors, we build a bridge between online and in-person participants. So first, we will project on our screen the image of the folks who are currently on Zoom. And we ask you to show yourselves and give them a wave. And would the Zoom people give us a wave? Oh, they did. Okay, good. Coffee and conversation will follow the service in Hodis Hall, and that's located to the left as you exit the sanctuary. Our newcomer table is a place where visitors and newcomers can meet and chat with members of the congregation and with each other. All are encouraged to drop by just for look for the colorful sign on one of the tables. A virtual coffee hour will also take place on Zoom after the service. Whenever and however we connect with BUC, we are building this beloved community.
Good morning. We light our chalice flame this morning to the words of the Apostle Paul from 1 Corinthians chapter 13. If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries, indeed, even if I have faith that can move mountains but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and subject my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I am nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy nor boast, nor is it proud. Love does not dishonor others. Love is not self-seeking. Love is not easily angered. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. Love never fails. Of the virtues, faith, hope, and love, the greatest is love. Please rise and join with us as you will for hymn number 131, Love Will Guide Us.
All right, amen, amen, amen. And we open our service with the words from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5. You are the light of the world. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand so it may give light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds, which glorify God. You are the light of the world.
The mission of Birmingham Unitarian Church includes action towards positive change in the world. One way we live into our mission is by giving half of our weekly offering to a nonprofit organization that shares our values and addresses needs in the community. To suggest a nonprofit for this donation, please check the BUC website under Justice to find the application form. Our shared offering recipient from July 19th through August 30th is the Detroit Justice Center. The Detroit Justice Center is a nonprofit law firm and advocacy organization working to create just cities where every life is valued and supported with dignity and care. Detroit Justice Center is a national organization rooted in Detroit, a city emblematic of both the arms of racial capitalism and the resilience of community-led solutions. Detroit Justice Center engages in legal, policy, and narrative work to inspire the work of building just cities across the nation. Their Just Cities national platform connects the on-the-ground innovation they support in Detroit while growing national efforts to rethink the criminal legal system, safety, land use, and public infrastructure. The Detroit Justice Center supports movements and institutions working to end mass incarceration, build equitable economies, and empower communities that have experienced disinvestment.
So we're blessed this week with only joys. Liza Robertson shares the joy that last Friday morning, Liza and her foster son Uriah became a forever family. Uriah came to Liza at 8 years old, so 3 years ago, and she is overjoyed to become a mother and looks forward to being a loving support for Uriah as he grows to and through adulthood. Kelly Taylor shares a joy. On Friday, Kelly had a checkup appointment with her oncologist, and he said that her labs are rock solid and everything continues to look good. And it was 6 years ago that Kelly was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. So Kelly, you are a hope and an inspiration for many people. And finally, Carol and Dick Wiseman celebrated their 59th anniversary. They were married here at BUC by Rabbi Sherwin Wine on August 12th, 1967. So if you join me in a moment of prayer. Spirit, by which we call you many names, though a spirit of abundant love, we rejoice with those of our beloved community who rejoice. And we hold in our hearts and minds those who are struggling, who may be grieving, who may be worried, who may need our collective strength. May we be for them a source of encouragement and comfort and assurance. But not only to them, also to those whose struggles remain private. Blessed be, and amen.
A meditation by Hafez. I know the way you can get when you have not had a drink of love. Your face hardens and your muscles cramp. Children become concerned about a strange look that appears in your eyes, which even begins to worry your own mirror. Squirrels and birds sense your sadness and call an important conference in a tall tree. They decide which secret code to chant to help your mind and soul. Even angels fear that brand of madness that arrays itself against the world and throws sharp stones and spears into the innocent and into one's self. Oh, I know the way you can get if you have not been drinking love. You might rip apart every sentence your friends and teachers say, looking for hidden clauses. You might weigh every word on a scale like a dead fish. You might pull out a ruler to measure from every angle in your darkness the dimensions of a heart you once trusted. I know the way you can get if you have not had a drink from love's hand. That is why all the great ones speak of the vital need to keep remembering God. So you will come to know and see him as being so playful and wanting, just wanting to help. That is why Chavez says, "Bring your cup near me, for all I care about is quenching your thirst for freedom. All a sane man can ever care about is giving love." A moment of silence.
Well, good morning, y'all. Wow, you're really hanging in here with me. All this evolutionary psychology I've been throwing your way. Kind of feel like you've been in a graduate school class last couple of weeks, but it's good to see you keep coming back. And if this has been a little too academic for you, today's kind of the last day of it, and today's not as heavy as the last 2 weeks. And so we're going to do a little bit more around evolutionary psych today, and then move on next week to a somewhat different topic. But really, while we're kind of evolutionary psych heavy, these first few sermons, as I sort of help you get to know me a bit and what grounds my ministry, the sermon series is really a slow roll from ego to love. And today, by the time the sermon's over in the next 20, 25 minutes, I hope it's really clear to you that this hasn't really been about evolutionary psychology as much as it is to help us understand how we get from the scoundrels we have discovered ourselves to be to more loving scoundrels. As I said, I think last week, love is both the goal and the path. And so that's really what these 3 weeks are about. I'm beginning to feel grounded with you all. How's it going living in that skin? Good? How about you? Yeah. How about you, scoundrel?
6, 7.
Been a while. It's good to see you. Have you been asking yourself that question? What's it like living in my own skin? Since I suggested that a couple weeks back. Have you been remembering to be kinder to yourselves? Have you remembered to have more graciousness toward others than you typically have? Yeah? Yeah, it's okay, because we got many Sundays coming up, and we're going to work on it. So I think the end of the Hafez poem struck me as a really good leaping off for this sermon. Bring your cup near me, for all I care about is quenching your thirst for freedom. And in a way, that's what these first few weeks are about. How do you get free from being the conditioned self you are so that you can be other? And then he ends it with, all a sane man can ever care about is giving love. And that's where we're headed, I hope, because in the world of Unitarian Universalism that I live in, we ought to be first and foremost about love. Remember last week I took the mind to task and I said, you can probably finish this sentence, Unitarian Universalism is the thinking person's religion. And it's very true. We identify very much with the mind. But my vision for Unitarian Universalism is that we become known as the loving person's religion. I want us to use our religion as an opportunity for transformation so that when we go out into the world and we show up in the world, people look at us and they say, that one's different than everybody else. Because that's the best testimony you can give to your Unitarian Universalist religious identity. And hopefully it makes us different than everyone else. And I hope it makes us different because we exude love. Because there's not enough of it in the world today. And that's really what this sermon series has been about. So, I did say that evolutionary psychology can explain everything from a deeper understanding of the likes of Jesus and the Buddha and the yogis, but it can also explain everything we face in today's world, like racial strife, geopolitical tensions, the kind of tensions that we're witnessing in our culture at large these days. It's very powerfully explanatory. So, most of you probably have hung in there the first 2 weeks with me, and I know a number of people have been watching regularly online, but not everybody, so I'm going to do a quick recap. But this time it's going to be quick because you've heard enough of it that you don't need to hear it all, but there's always the possibility of a few people who are behind the curve, and if you are, you can go on YouTube and watch the first 2 Sundays. So, Taylor, could you just throw this first PowerPoint? All right, so I'm going to roll through this quickly. No verbal footnotes. So, in the first sermon, Have You? I invoked evolutionary biology, and I explained that I use the term scoundrel as a term of endearment, reminding us to go easy on ourselves and others. We need to take this seriously, as well as reminding us of the point of the spiritual life. Okay, next. And I said there's good news in understanding ourselves this way. And the good news is that we are not to blame for being the scoundrels we have found ourselves to be, nor are others to blame for being the scoundrels they are found to be. And that's kind of hard for those of us who think the way we're a scoundrel is the way all scoundrels should be. But people are different. And I said, this is a scientific explanation of sin and a scientific argument for unconditional love for those of you who need a scientific grounding for your understanding of life. Okay, and then I added, there's bad news, and the bad news is that once you know you are a scoundrel, you are responsible for whom you become from that moment forth. And I held up Jesus and the adulteress as an example. And Jesus said to the adulteress, go your way, sin no more. In other words, I said the point of the spiritual life is the transformation of being. Okay, Taylor, next slide. And I ended that sermon by posing this question as a mnemonic device: have you yet become the person you want to be before you die? Okay, that was a synopsis of Sermon 1. Next slide, Taylor. Last week, Sermon 2 in this series, called Tearing the Cloth to Shreds, I said that from the perspective of the spiritual agenda, i.e. transformation, the mind is an impediment. To wit Rumi's poem, which I quoted last week, I have given up on my brain, I've torn the cloth to shreds and thrown it away. Okay, next slide. And what I was trying to convey there is that the mind is not powerful enough to bring about transformation. We have an inverted idea of the structure of the self. We're very identified with the mind, and so we think it's in charge. But I made an argument last week in the sermon, which is very important for the point I was trying to make, that the way the self really operates is that our instinctual drives are large and in charge. What really drives us is the need to find a one-on-one mating experience, to have a place in the tribe, and to be able to provide for our security through self-preservation means. Okay? In this journey of transformation, we are up against that instinctual nature. This is a tough row to hoe. If you want to be otherwise than the scoundrel you find yourself to be, you are up against the very rootedness of your egoic structure. It's very hard work. As one of my teachers, Robin Amos, said, who mined the Greek Orthodox monks on Mount Athos in Greece for his spiritual wisdom, he used to say, the spiritual journey is against egoic tendency. That's one to take home. The spiritual journey is against egoic tendency. And otherwise, whenever you're having an egoic reaction to something, that's a cue to you to actually act counter to that tendency. And I said the way you do that is by learning to observe when that's happening to you and just take a pause. Did any of you have an opportunity this week that you actually took advantage of to pause when you were dealing with another scoundrel in your life? Did it help just to pause? Because if you can pause, that egoic contraction and that tendency to react according to your conditioning really will pretty quickly diminish. And that's a game changer. Was that a game changer in your interpersonal dynamic? So by introducing the great pause, you're really acting counter to your tendency. And that's the first step in the spiritual life. And if you can do that pause, you're free. You're free of your habitual tendency. Then you can choose from whence you want to react. And I suggested the best virtue from which to react is love, right? So, last slide here. This is one to help you remember last sermon. It is love that tames the savage beast. In other words, love is the mean by which transformation takes place, by which we finally become the person we want to be before we die. So, that's the last slide. Does that all sound familiar to you? Does that sound coherent? Is it linear enough for your rational minds? All right. So we're enough on the same page. And the next 15-ish minutes are going to be easy by comparison to last week and the week before. We're still talking about this same theme, and I am going to talk a little bit more about the instinctual life, a little bit of a deeper dive into it, but not harder, easier. And the reason I'm doing this is because we're putting the exclamation point on the message of how we become loving scoundrels. Okay? So here's another poem by Hafez. How did the rose ever open its heart and give to this world all its beauty? How did the rose ever open its heart and give to this world all its beauty? Hafez answers the question. It felt the encouragement of light against its being. It felt the encouragement of light against its being. Otherwise, says Hafez, we all remain too frightened. So I think I mentioned in my first or second sermon that I used to do an online mystic poet circle with people, and I would share a mystic poem like this, and we would all talk about what we're hearing in the poem. And in this poem, when I've done it, I always throw out the question, if you have to be the light or the rose, which are you? And I want you to hold that question while I read it again. And actually, keep it to yourself, but try to answer the question. How did the rose ever open its heart and give to this world all its beauty? It felt the encouragement of light against its being. Otherwise, we all remain too frightened. Which are you, the rose or the light? I have found in the people I've worked with around this particular poem so far that most people identify with the rose. And it makes a lot of sense. Who wouldn't want to blossom into the beautiful rose in your experience of your human life? The long stem red rose is my favorite flower. It has been since I was a kid. I don't know why. I've always been fascinated and mesmerized by roses. But I think they're incredibly beautiful. And I think they're wonderful metaphors for our potential as human beings. They're also wonderful metaphors for life. I mean, you have those soft, lush red petals, which are just exquisitely beautiful and mesmerizing and satisfying. But they also have thorns, as does life. Sometimes when people give a gift of a long stem rose, they dethorn it. I never dethorn my roses. So for that reason, if I ever give you a long stem rose, hold it gently, as we should hold life. Okay. So when I think about this question, are we the rose or the light? I'm thinking about how we show up in the world. Right? And so this is a next step. You know, last week it was like you wanna be love. But how does love show up in the world as the rose or the light? Okay. So this gets me back to this whole question of our instinctual nature. How we show up in the world is incredibly important because whenever we show up in the world, we are in dynamic interpersonal relationship with others, which means we are helping to create their experience of life and our own. So if you think about it, every moment of engagement you have with another human being, you are helping to determine their experience of life by how you show up and what you present to them. And my favorite example of this, although I have many, is the cashier at Kroger's. You know, I worked in a supermarket for a while, and I did that job, and it's a surprisingly stressful job because you have to deal with a lot of scoundrels who don't know that they're scoundrels. Like the vast majority of people don't understand their conditioned nature and that they just go through life being their conditioned selves, which, as I've mentioned, is not always a pleasant thing to be. And the cashier just has to sit there do their job, and smile. One scoundrel after the other. And one particular day I was at Kroger's and there was this scoundrel in front of me, and I don't know what kind of day that guy had, but he was giving her the hardest time. And it went on for I almost got in another line. It was going on so long, but he was being so harsh with her that I thought, I'm just going to stay here and watch how this plays out. And eventually he left, and she was literally in tears. And so here's this cashier who just had an encounter with this person who, in that moment, made her life miserable. And now it's my turn. And what am I going to do? She doesn't know me from Adam. Here comes another guy. And I got my stuff on the conveyor belt, and I got up to her, and I'm looking at her, and I could see that she's struggling. And I said to her, "It must be hard to live in his skin." And she got it, and she relaxed and very quickly became okay again. I didn't try to pick up her pieces. I just tried to point out to her, that wasn't about you, that was about him. You don't have to own that. And she got it. And so he created one life experience for her in his moment with her, and I created another. And you see how different those experiences she had were? We have that power all the time. Whenever we encounter anyone, they're going to leave feeling better or worse than they did before we encountered them. All the time, you have that effect. And one of the things I try to remember is that every interpersonal dynamic I have with somebody is a testimony to my spiritual journey. And if I can't leave them feeling better, I haven't lived up to my own teaching. I haven't yet become the scoundrel I want to be before I die. Okay, you get all that? Okay. So here's how I think about a way to remember this work. As I said, we're always being driven by our instinctual nature, which is very intense and very self-centered, very conditioned with a negative tendency, and we tend to react from that negative tendency more often than we don't, right? So if you think about the instinctual life, just before COVID hit, or when COVID hit, I was on sabbatical, and I was working on a curriculum that has sat on the shelf since, which I hope to get going this year. And it was a curriculum that was the basics of how to engage and walk a spiritual path. And of course, now you've heard enough of me that you realize that the biggest impediment is our egoic identification. So I dug an awful lot into how the structure of the self is working, because that's the devil in the details on the spiritual journey, hence the sermon series. And one of the things that really caught me was two themes, really, the instinctual life and neurology. And when it comes to the instinctual life, after I dug into it for quite some time, a light bulb went off. And the light bulb that went off was this. The instinctual life, it's helpful to think of it in two ways. We have these instinctual drives that must be met. So we don't want to deprecate that. It's part of how we live and thrive in the world. And so on some level, you have to acknowledge the instincts must be satisfied. And that's okay. It's okay to want your instinctual life to be satisfying. And when it is, you can proceed with the evolutionary agenda. But I notice, especially here in America, especially in the West, we don't seem to recognize when our instinctual life has been satisfied sufficiently. And we seem to be on this wheel of life where we have totally bought in to the message that the whole point of life is instinctual satisfaction. the more pleasant instinctual experiences you have, the better your life is said to be. Because, in all honesty, it's a pretty modicum level of instinctual satisfaction we need to survive in the world. But I see us chasing instinctual satisfactions all the time. All the time. Food, power, sex, money, whatever the case may be. We just seem always to be trying to accumulate more instinctual satisfactory experiences. And when you're doing that beyond your instinctual need, what you're really doing is indulging in instinctual gratification. Does that make sense? So instinctual satisfaction is necessary. Instinctual gratification is a huge egoic problem. And one of the things we can do to really help ourselves in life is to recognize there comes a point at which my instinctual needs are satisfied. But if I continue to pursue them, I'm engaging in instinctual gratification. And I'm trying to make life continually about my instinctual needs. And what happens when we do that? Well, life continues to be about us and not other. In other words, we still think we're the rose that's trying to bloom and grow. I need to keep being fed. I'm not okay if I can't get my instinctual gratification demands met. We're taking. It's about us, it's about us, it's about us. And so a fundamental teaching around the instinctual life is, can you recognize when your instinctual needs are satisfied? And instead of continuing to satisfy them or gratifying them even more, pull the brake and recognize at that point, it's time to give to others. Most of us move through life continuing to take, continuing to seek instinctual gratification when we've had all we've needed for a long time. And we fail to recognize there comes a point in our maturation as human beings where we have enough. And we need to recognize that point and begin to realize now it's time to give to others. It may be material things. It may be psychological things. It may be spiritual things. And so the metaphor I raised here, are you the rose or the light? As long as you're in instinctual mode, you're the rose. You're needing to be given light in order to blossom. You're needing to receive, you're needing to take from others. And it's okay. It's a natural part of our maturation for a time. But there comes a point at which the rose needs to transfigure into light, where we need to become the light-giving source to others in order to help them live, thrive, grow, mature, and transform as well. Does that make sense? So here's some homework. If you choose, my homework's always optional, but I hope you do it. The next time you encounter somebody, ask yourself, in this encounter, am I looking for what I need? Or am I in a position to hear what someone else needs and give that back? We don't recognize how often we're listening for what we can get when we engage other people. It could be something, I'm hoping to get this job in this interview, or I'm hoping to get this date, or I'm hoping to get them to agree with me. How self-referencing we are. That's a cue that you're in instinctual gratification and you're still making it about you. But most of us reach a point in life where, even though that's the tendency, it's not the best way to show up. So maybe you can hear, what is this person trying to get from me? What did they need from me? And maybe what they need is something you can give. And do that instead. Learn to listen just for the sake of the other. Learn to show up just for the sake of the other. Be the light in someone else's life. Give away that love that you have finally become. That's where the journey's taking us. We go from the scoundrels we are to transformed scoundrels who can act from love. And then we take that action in the world and we act from love toward others. We become their light. Does that make sense? All right. That's how simple today's message is. Don't let yourself succumb to continual instinctual gratification. Recognize you've got enough. And start to give. And learn to listen for what and how to give. Hafez also says this: why not become the one who lives with a full moon in each eye, that is always saying with that sweet moon language what every other person in the world is dying to hear? Why not become the one who lives with a full moon in each eye, that is always saying with that sweet moon language what every other person in the world is dying to hear? Every encounter we have is an opportunity to practice being someone else's light. To practice being love. Every other person we encounter, in other words, there are endless opportunities for this, is the opportunity for us to work on becoming the person we want to be before we die. So, as you've heard me say, we take the next step in love. And we perform the next action in love, and we speak the next word in love, and we think the next thought in love, and we breathe the next breath in love. So, I always say to my congregations, am I making sense? Usually they say yes, and if they're like, I don't think so, I hold them another 10 minutes and try again. Am I making sense? I know you're following me. Does this not sound like the agenda that our incredibly wonderful Unitarian Universalist religion ought to aspire? To become the loving person's religion and not the thinking person's religion? That's how you change the world, and that is how you keep this faith vital and alive. Not with the mind. And then I say to people, we're soon going to coffee hour. If you truly followed me, and you agree at least somewhat with what I've been saying, can you take this into coffee hour? And when you're holding that beautiful cup of instinctually gratifying coffee, because it's part of your self-preservation agenda, while you hold that and you're looking in someone else's eyes, notice if you're having an engagement where you're trying to figure out what I'm getting from them, or if you're actually in a position where you can listen to find out what they need from you. It's just a practice. Try it in coffee hour. See how today goes. Then take it home. Try it with your spouse. Try it with your kids. Take it to work. Try it with your coworker. You'll feel different, and you'll change the nature of the game. Our last sermon is number 20, Be Thou My Vision. Please rise as you are able.
Extinguishing the chalice flame by Hafez. Even after all these years, the sun never says to the earth, "You owe me." Look what happens with a love like that. It lights up the sky.
So as we go our way, today, this week, this month, this year, throughout the course of our lives, let us remember to make beauty for one another. And let us remember to let love have jurisdiction. So be it. Namaste, everybody.